Hi, in this video, I go over how to install fiber cement siding. I try to include helpful things I've learned and include what fasteners and tools I used. I hope I can be helpful to you. I got this James Hardie siding from a place in Lancaster, Pennsylvania called Ironstone Building Supply. They gave me a great deal. They're not near where I am. I am in Northeast PA. I am in the Poconos. Even after they charged me shipping for $300, I still ended up paying less than $10 a piece. I did have to buy an entire pallet of this siding from them. I didn't need 252 pieces to do this 900 square foot building. I had a bunch of siding left over, which was fine because I just finished a sauna and shed that's a couple hundred square feet. And inside of that, I'm going to be adding videos of building that sauna shed thing, and you should check those videos out. This James Hardie siding is 7¼ inches by 144 inches, so they're 12-foot pieces. They're actually 7¼ inch. The reveal is 6 inches. The siding here that I got a deal on is Cedar Mill Woodland Cream. In my opinion, it's a terrible color. You would not want your building, house, or business to be this color. I planned on painting this building black from the beginning, which I think makes it a lot easier. If you're going to keep the siding the color that it comes in, you have to get the paint from James Hardie. You have to dab all the ends you cut and around the windows with their color. I don't know, after caulking all the windows and doors, how you would keep everything looking neat. I mean, obviously you're saving a lot of time not having to paint whatever you sided, but I mean, it seemed to get caulk everywhere. It didn't really matter because I was just going to paint over everything. I never used fiber cement siding before, and when I researched it, I found a great article in JLC. The Journal of Light Construction has a great magazine and website that it's worth every penny to subscribe to. Even if you're like me and you just find this stuff interesting to read about and you're not doing every project they're talking about in this magazine, super interesting. They do a great job. Great pictures, great descriptions. I love getting this magazine. JLC had an article on how to cut this siding. There were contractors who tested out the different ways of cutting this fiber cement siding because you can't just use a chop saw with a regular blade. There are these nippers that you can add on to your drill, and they can, like, they scissor cut the siding. I've never tried those, and I wonder if they do a neat job when you're cutting around the doors and windows. This article in JLC said the best way was just to use a utility knife with a rafter square and then just break it by hand. And it was super easy. They were right. For the utility knife, you need to get the carbon tipped blades. So here's a video I took of how I cut a piece of siding. One thing I learned was that if you cut a piece of siding and you cut it like a 1/2 inch too long, it's really hard to cut like a 1/4 inch or a 1/2 inch off of the piece you just tried to fit. When you're cutting the siding and you can pull up a large piece of it and break it like I am in the video, it's easy. But if you're trying to break off just like a 1/2 inch, you can kind of do the same thing as normal and use the utility knife. I sliced at it about 20 times, and then I'd grab pliers and like pinch off the excess. For cutting the pieces of siding around the doors and windows, you're not going to be able to use the utility knife. Even if you tried for hours, I don't think you could do it. I used a plunge saw. There's a HardiBlade blade that you need to get. You cannot use a regular blade to cut fiber cement siding. I use this plunge saw that's on a track, and you need one of these. I guess you could just use this for cutting each piece, but it creates a ton of dust. The bad thing about fiber cement siding is it has silica in it, which is something you cannot breathe in. I hooked up my track saw to this vintage Sears shop vac, which helped a lot, but you still need to use a respirator What's nice about cutting the pieces with the utility knife is that it doesn't make a lot of dust. I still wore a mask when I was cutting the pieces to length. The ends you cut, and when you cut around the windows, you need to spray those ends. You need to prime them with paint. They shouldn't be exposed. From my experience doing this project, I would say you don't need to spray all the ends or prime all the ends if you're just going to end up painting this building anyway. If you're trying to keep the siding the color it came in, then yeah, you have to prime all of your cuts. And I just used spray paint. I primed all the cuts that I made because I knew this building was going to sit out for a few months before I painted it. I actually left a piece or two out in the winter in the rain for months, like for about a year, and I was surprised it wasn't mush. So if I could do it again, I wouldn't have wasted a few cans of paint spraying all the cuts, especially if your siding is behind an overhang and it's not getting wet before you paint it. I wouldn't waste your time, in my opinion. Before you install the siding, you have to do all the trim around the windows, doors, and you're going to need to do the corners. I was able to get PVC trim for a deal from the place in Lancaster, Ironstone Building Supply. PVC trim totally shrinks just like wood. I installed some of the windows in the cold, and then it looked perfect when I cut them, and then now they look a little bit off. Don't make the mistake I made. I had these scrap pieces of plywood that I thought I could use up instead of sacrificing a couple pieces of siding. I thought I could save myself a couple bucks, but the plywood I used was 1/2 inch and the siding is 5/16 inch. So that one wall I tried the plywood as a starter. If I point it out, you can see that it's sticking out 3/16 of an inch farther than it should. It doesn't look neat. Don't do that. Just sacrifice a couple pieces of siding. It'll be a lot easier. If you have a plunge saw on a track, it doesn't take long to rip a few pieces of siding for your starter strip. What made it easy about this project was when I'm looking to nail the siding, I don't have to look for the 2x6s or 2x4s that are behind sheathing and behind house wrap. What I'm nailing into is these furring strips. And so they're right there in front of me. When you butt two ends together on the wall, you need to put felt paper behind it. I cut a bunch of 8-inch by 5-inch pieces. On the two rake walls on this building, I put the trim over top of the siding to hide all the nails. I tried to get the siding as close as I could to the open overhang and then just put it over top of it. I think it looks okay. On a recent project, when I did the trim first, it definitely took longer to cut the siding and I wasted a few pieces. It definitely looks neater, but then you're going to have all the nails at the top that you're going to have to caulk with something. I used 2-inch galvanized finish nails when I wasn't going to end up covering up a nail with the siding around the windows and the doors. And so at the top of the rake walls, if you're not going to be covering up the top of the siding with trim, I would use finish nails. Another important thing I learned was that I had 5/4 trim and I had 1-inch trim. The 1-inch trim, if it's on the same plane as the siding, it's going to sit almost flush with the siding, and I don't think it looks neat. You want to put a furring strip behind the trim first and then do your window or door trim, or double up your 1-inch trim if that's all you could get. But the one thing you want to make sure with this siding is to use 5/4 inch thick trim. You leave an 1/8 inch gap between the siding and all your trim. After you finish the siding, you need to caulk around everything. This caulk is the best. I wouldn't try to use regular door window caulk. This quad caulk stuff, you don't have to tool it. You just go down the corner, go down the side of the doors. It's super quick. And DAP Platinum Patch is the greatest exterior nail filler. The stuff's great. That's my video. Thanks for checking it out. I hope I helped you somehow. You can do this. You can do it yourself. Subscribe.